Have you ever wondered why human beings keep returning to ritual even after they call themselves modern? Have you noticed how the mind laughs at ceremony in daylight, but secretly searches for meaning at night? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are stepping into a river of ancient memory. A river that looks like tradition on the surface, but carries something far deeper underneath. The Yajurveda is often introduced as the Veda of rituals. And for many people, that phrase sounds like rules, priests, and old fire ceremonies. But if we listen with a quieter mind, we may hear a different message. The first idea is that ritual is not mainly about pleasing a distant power. It is about training attention and shaping character through repeated intention. The second idea is that knowledge systems are not only books and theories. They are living maps for how to turn ordinary life into a path of wisdom, karma, awareness, and compassion. Let me start with a confession many people have but rarely say out loud. Even if we live in a world of screens and speed, we still crave something sacred. We crave a moment that feels bigger than our personal drama. We crave a rhythm that tells the nervous system it can rest. We crave a place where our scattered thoughts can gather into a single point. Some people find that in music, some in sports, some in prayer, some in silence, some in service. The outer form changes, but the inner longing is the same. We want our life to mean something. This is where the Yajurveda comes in, like an old teacher who does not shout. It does not mainly argue. It demonstrates. It shows a way of doing that shapes a way of being. When people hear the word ritual, they imagine empty repetition. But repetition can be empty only when intention is absent. Repetition can also be a ladder. Every day you can climb the same ladder and still rise. The movement looks similar from the outside, but inside, you are changing. Now imagine the ancient scene, not as a museum picture, but as a living morning. The sky is still pale, the air is cool. Someone wakes before the village noise begins. They wash their face. They sit near a small fire space or a clean corner. They prepare. Not just objects, but the mind. They speak words that have been spoken for generations, but they do not speak them like a parrot. They speak them like a vow to remember the invisible laws of life, a vow to remember that actions have consequences, a vow to remember gratitude, a vow to remember that the ego is not the center of the universe. If you have never done anything like that, it may sound foreign, but if you look closely, you will recognize the pattern. Athletes warm up, musicians tune instruments, students organize notes before studying. Even a person who makes coffee the same way every morning is performing a ritual. The question is not whether we have rituals. The question is whether our rituals awaken us or numb us. The Yajurveda is deeply connected to the practical side of sacred life, while other Vedic texts include hymns and broader philosophical exploration. The Yajurveda is often described as oriented toward the procedures and formulas used in sacrificial rituals. But here is the key that changes everything. Sacrifice, in its deepest sense, is not about loss. It is about offering. And offering, psychologically, is the practice of loosening the fist of possession. Think about how the mind suffers. A huge part of suffering comes from gripping a story about myself, gripping an expectation of others, gripping a desire that must be satisfied right now, gripping an identity that must be defended. When the grip tightens, compassion shrinks. When compassion shrinks, karma gets heavy, not because some judge is angry, but because your actions become reactive. Reactive actions create messy consequences. Messy consequences create more fear. Fear creates more gripping. This is the wheel. Now imagine a life where, every day, you practice offering, not offering to buy favor, but offering as training. Offering as a reminder that you are part of a larger flow. That practice slowly rewires the nervous system. It teaches humility. It teaches patience. It teaches reverence, not as weakness, but as wisdom. Reverence is simply the recognition that life is not fully under your control, and therefore you must live responsibly, unkindly. This is why the Yajurveda can be read as a manual of attention. Its ritual framework is a technology for concentrating mind and aligning action with higher intention. The outer ritual becomes an inner rehearsal for how to behave in daily life. If you can offer clarified butter into a fire with steadiness, can you also offer your anger into awareness before it burns someone? If you can recite a formula with precision, can you also speak truth with care? If you can prepare a sacred space, can you also prepare your heart before you enter a difficult conversation? Let us bring it closer to modern life with a story. There is a young woman named Mira. That is not her real name, but let us call her that. She lives in a city that never stops moving. She studies, works, scrolls, rushes, and tries to keep up with the invisible competition that modern life creates. She is not unhappy in a dramatic way, but she is exhausted in a quiet way. She feels like she is always late, even when she is on time. Her mind keeps running even when her body lies down. One night she watches a lecture where someone explains the Yajurveda as part of an Indian knowledge system, not just a religious artifact. She hears words like ritual, discipline, cosmic order, and she rolls her eyes a little. But something in her listens, because she recognizes a missing piece in her life. Structure that is not pressure, discipline that is not punishment, meaning that is not a performance for social approval. So she experiments, not with fire sacrifices, not with complicated procedures. She begins with a small daily offering ritual that she designs with sincerity. Every morning she sits for a few minutes and asks herself one question: what am I offering today? She offers her impatience to awareness. She offers her fear to breath. She offers her jealousy to honesty. She offers her need to be right to the desire to understand. She ends by offering gratitude for the simple fact of being alive. At first it feels silly. Her mind complains. This is not productive. This is not efficient. But she continues, and something changes. Not overnight, but steadily. Her day begins to have a center. Her attention becomes less fragmented. She starts noticing her impulses before she acts on them. That gap is the birthplace of freedom. Now here is the interesting part. This is exactly what a ritual system is meant to do when it is alive. It is not meant to be dead repetition. It is meant to create the gap between stimulus and reaction, the gap where wisdom can enter, the gap where karma can be transformed. In many traditions, there is an idea of order in the universe, sometimes called cosmic order, sometimes expressed as law, sometimes as balance. In Vedic thought, a related concept is often discussed as the order that keeps things coherent, the pattern that makes seasons return and consequences follow actions. You do not need to turn it into superstition. You can see it directly. If you plant bitterness, you tend to harvest conflict. If you plant generosity, you tend to harvest trust. If you plant disciplined practice, you tend to harvest skill. The world is not perfectly fair in every detail, but the direction of seeds matters. This is karma as a living principle. So the Yajurveda, as a ritual-oriented text, can be understood as a way of training humans to live in harmony with this law, not by controlling the universe, but by controlling the self. And controlling the self does not mean suppressing emotions. It means understanding them. It means transforming raw impulses into skillful action. Let us step into another scene. Older, farther back, but still human. A teacher sits beside a student in an open space. The student asks a question that sounds like yours and mine. Why do we do these rituals? The teacher does not say because you must. The teacher says because your mind is wild. The student laughs, offended, because the student thinks being wild is personality. But the teacher continues. Your mind jumps, it forgets, it creates stories, it becomes greedy, it becomes fearful, it becomes cruel when it feels threatened. Ritual is a harness, not to destroy the horse, but to guide it so that the horse can carry you to freedom rather than throw you into a ditch. If you have ever tried meditation, you know this is true. Use it for 2 minutes and your mind starts building a movie. You are not weak. You are human. Training the mind is not an optional luxury. It is the foundation of peace. And peace is not only personal. A peaceful person harms less. A peaceful person listens more. A peaceful person becomes a blessing in a family, in a workplace, in a society. So when we speak about knowledge systems, we are speaking about the science of becoming human in the fullest sense. Not just clever, but wise. Not just ambitious, but compassionate. Not just informed, but awakened. This is why any Indian knowledge systems, including those connected with Vedic literature, often include a relationship between sound, meaning, and consciousness. Chanted words are not only semantic, they are rhythmic training. They discipline breath. They discipline attention. They create a shared field when practiced in community. Again, you can interpret this in mystical language or in psychological language. Either way, the effect can be real when practice is sincere. Now let us be careful. There is also a danger in ritual. The danger is forgetting the purpose. When the purpose is forgotten, ritual becomes empty, and empty ritual becomes a stage for ego. People compete over correctness. People judge others. People use tradition as a weapon. That is not wisdom. That is spiritual pride dressed as holiness. So a mature view of the Yajurveda includes both respect and discernment. Respect for the depth of human experimentation it contains, and discernment to keep practice aligned with compassion and awakening rather than with superiority. Let us return to Mira, because her story becomes more interesting. As her morning offering practice continues, her relationships change. At work, she stops reacting quickly. When someone criticizes her, she feels the heat rise, but she remembers her offering. She offers the heat to awareness. She breathes. She responds with clarity instead of attack. The other person does not know what happened, but they feel it. The conflict dissolves faster. Karma shifts right there, in that tiny moment, because karma is not fate carved in stone. Karma is the ongoing creation of patterns. At home, she notices how often she speaks without listening. She begins to practice listening as ritual. When her mother speaks, she offers her urge to interrupt. When her friend complains, she offers her urge to give advice too quickly. She learns that compassion is not fixing. Compassion is presence. And then something unexpected happens. She begins to see her addictions, not just the obvious ones like scrolling, but the subtle ones. The addiction to being right, the addiction to being seen as good, the addiction to avoiding discomfort. In the language of inner practice, seeing is already half the liberation. Because what is unconscious controls you, but what is conscious can be transformed. This is where the Yajurveda as a knowledge system becomes more than historical. It becomes a living mirror. It asks you to examine what you are offering to life each day. Are you offering awareness or distraction? Are you offering kindness or sarcasm? Are you offering patience or hurried judgment? Are you offering truth or performance? Now let us shift to a broader lens. When we speak about Indian knowledge systems, we are speaking about multiple domains: philosophy, ethics, linguistics, mathematics, medicine, arts, governance, spirituality, the Vedic traditions. It's inside that larger cultural history, and the Yajurveda represents one stream within it. Even if you never adopt any ritual externally, you can still learn from the logic that ritual reflects. The logic is that inner life must be trained through repeated intentional practice. Without training, the mind becomes a noisy dictator. With training, the mind becomes a useful tool. You may ask, what does awakening mean here? Awakening does not mean floating above life. Awakening means seeing clearly, seeing the chain from intention to action to consequence, seeing the ego games that pretend to protect you but actually imprison you, seeing the shared humanity in others so compassion becomes natural rather than forced. And wisdom is not information. Wisdom is the ability to choose actions that reduce suffering and increase clarity. Wisdom understands that quick pleasure can produce long pain. Wisdom understands that harsh speech can win a moment but poison a relationship. Wisdom understands that revenge feels like power but creates a future of fear. So if the Yajurveda is ritual heavy, then the deepest question is what kind of human being those rituals aim to cultivate. A human being who remembers interdependence. A human being who practices gratitude. A human being who respects the invisible consequences of behavior. A human being who can participate in life without being consumed by selfish craving. Now, I want to tell another story. This one about a man named Arjun. Arjun is a manager in a company. He is efficient. He is sharp. He gets results. People respect him but do not relax around him. He does not understand why. He thinks respect should be enough. But at night, he feels lonely. He scrolls through motivational content, but it does not touch the ache. One day, through a random chain of links, he hears someone talk about the meaning of offering in ritual. Not offering is transaction, but offering is training of the ego. It irritates him. He thinks, I do not have time for that. But something happens at work. A conflict with a colleague escalates. He says something that is technically correct, but emotionally cruel. The colleague withdraws. The team energy drops. Productivity falls. For the first time, Arjun sees that being right can be wrong in a deeper sense. He senses the law of karma operating in real time, not mystical, just practical. Action creates consequence, including emotional consequence. So he starts a practice. Before he enters the office, he pauses in his car. He does 1 minute of offering. He offers the desire to dominate into awareness. He offers the fear of failure into breath. He offers the need to be admired into the intention to be useful. Again, simple, almost silly. But the effect is strong because it is sincere. Weeks later, his team begins to change, not because he becomes weak, but because he becomes steady. He can still set standards, but he does it without contempt. He can still correct mistakes, but he does it without humiliation. People begin to trust him. Trust is the most valuable currency in any human system. This is how ancient knowledge becomes modern medicine. It treats the disease of unconsciousness. Unconsciousness is the root of so much suffering. Not knowing what we are doing while we do it, not seeing our intention, not seeing our fear, not seeing how our pain turns into harm. Now, some viewers might be wondering about the word sacrifice again, because in modern language, sacrifice often means giving up something you love unwillingly. But in a deeper spiritual sense, sacrifice can mean giving up what harms you willingly, sacrificing the habit of resentment, sacrificing the habit of gossip, sacrificing the habit of self-pity, sacrificing the habit of blaming others for your inner state. If you have ever tried to let go of resentment, you know it is not easy. Resentment gives a false sense of power. It says, "I am the victim, therefore I am righteous." But resentment also poisons you. Letting go feels like losing identity. That is why practice is needed. Ritual, in the best sense, supports letting go by making it a repeated commitment. You return again and again, not to impress anyone, but to free yourself. This brings us to a subtle and important point. A knowledge system is not only what you know, it is how you know. It is the method by which insight is produced. The Yajurveda contains a method-oriented approach. It says, "Do this in a certain way, with a certain intention, and you will produce a certain inner result." That is like a laboratory of consciousness. Again, if you remove superstition and keep the discipline, you can still appreciate the method. Now I want to address the audience members who feel skeptical. Skepticism can be healthy. Blind belief is dangerous. But there is also a skepticism that is just fear wearing a clever mask. The fear of being disappointed, the fear of being wrong, the fear of opening the heart. That kind of skepticism blocks learning. So a balanced approach is to test the principles in your own life. Do not argue about ritual. Try a small conscious ritual and observe the effect. For example, before you eat, pause for 10 seconds and offer gratitude. Notice if you eat differently. Before you speak in a conflict, pause for one breath and offer your anger into awareness. Notice if the conversation changes. Before you sleep, offer forgiveness to yourself for the mistakes of the day and set intention to do better tomorrow. Notice if your dreams feel different. This is experimentation, not blind belief. Now, let us widen the lens again and talk about destiny, because many people come to spiritual topics because they feel stuck. They think destiny is fixed. They think they are doomed to repeat patterns. The teaching hidden inside karma-oriented thinking is that patterns are strong but not absolute. You can change a pattern by changing the inputs. The inputs are your daily intentions and actions. You do not need to change everything at once. Change one small daily offering. Change one daily habit of speech. Change one daily habit of attention. Over time, destiny changes because you are no longer feeding the old wheel. This is why the Yajurveda can be framed as a text of disciplined transformation. It says, "You are not saved by wishing. You are transformed by practice." Practice is love in action. Practice is compassion toward your future self. Practice is humility, because it admits you are not finished. Now let us turn this into a living narrative for you. As if you and I are walking together. You wake up tomorrow. The world will still be noisy. Your responsibilities will still exist. People will still misunderstand you sometimes. You will still have moods. You will still have cravings. But you can choose to begin differently. You can choose to begin with remembering your intention, remembering the law of cause and effect, remembering that every interaction is a chance to plant seeds. Use it for a moment. You ask 2 questions. What kind of person do I want to be today? And what am I willing to offer to become that person? Then you offer something small. You offer your impatience. You offer your need for control. You offer your fear of being judged. You offer your envy. You offer your laziness. You offer your harshness, not by hating them, but by seeing them. Seeing is the offering. Awareness is the fire that transforms. Then you move into the day. A test appears. Someone cuts you off in traffic, or someone speaks rudely, or your plan fails. You feel the old reaction rising, but you remember the morning offering. You create the gap. You choose a different action. That different action produces a different consequence. That different consequence reinforces a new identity. A new identity shapes a new destiny. This is not poetry only. It is psychology. It is ethics. It is spiritual practice. It is the meeting point where wisdom becomes practical. Now, because this channel always circles back to compassion, let us speak about compassion more directly. Ritual can become selfish if it is used only to ask for personal gain. But ritual becomes compassionate when it includes the well-being of others. The best inner practice makes you kinder. If your practice makes you arrogant, something is off. If your practice makes you cold, something is off. If your practice makes you more patient, more honest, more gentle, more courageous, then you are moving toward awakening. So how do we hold ancient rituals respectfully without becoming rigid? We hold the essence, not only the form. The essence is intentionality, reverence, discipline, gratitude, offering, and alignment with ethical living. The form can vary by time and culture. Some people will chant, some will meditate, some will serve, some will keep a daily vow of silence for a few minutes. Some will light a candle at night and offer forgiveness. The form is less important than the sincerity. Now let me share a moment that might feel familiar. A viewer writes to the channel and says, "I tried meditation but my mind is too busy. I feel like a failure." I tell them, you are not failing. You are finally seeing. The business was always there. You just did not notice because distraction covered it. The moment you sit and notice the mind, you have already begun awakening. That noticing is the first ritual, the ritual of returning. This return is central. You return to breath. You return to kindness. You return to truth. You return to the understanding that every action matters. And this is where the Yajurveda, as a ritual-oriented path, has something timeless to say. It says, do not wait for motivation. Build structure. Do not wait for a mood. Build practice. Do not wait for life to become easy. Become steady in the middle of difficulty. This steadiness is spiritual strength. Now, let us take one more story, because stories help the heart remember. There is an older woman named Sita. She has lived through enough to be humble. She has seen family conflict, financial stress, illness, and loss. She does not talk about spirituality in fancy terms, but she has a small daily ritual. Every evening, she cleans a small space, sits, and speaks words of gratitude for 3 things. Then she offers a prayer that anyone who is suffering may find relief. She does not do it for reward. She does it because it keeps her heart soft. A younger relative mocks her, says, "It is outdated." She smiles. She does not argue. Years later, that younger relative goes through a crisis, a breakup, a job loss, a deep anxiety that makes sleep difficult. In that pain, the relative remembers the older woman who stayed gentle through storms. The relative asks, "How did you stay steady?" The older woman says, "I practiced remembering. I practiced offering. I practiced compassion before life forced me to. That is the point. Practice prepares you. Then when destiny tests you, you do not collapse as easily. You may still cry. You may still feel pain. But you do not become cruel. You do not become hopeless. You do not become unconscious. You remain human. This is why the Yajurveda matters beyond history, because it represents a civilization-level recognition that human life needs training. Not training for machines, but training for the soul, for the heart, for the mind, for ethics. Now let us talk about the relationship between the divine and the human, not as dogma, but as an inner experience. Ritual often functions as a bridge between the ordinary and the sacred. The sacred is not a location. It is a quality of attention. When you pay attention with reverence, the ordinary becomes luminous. When you pay attention with greed, even beautiful things become dull. So the divine-human relationship can be seen as the relationship between your highest potential and your current habits. Ritual calls your highest potential into the room. And this links to awakening again. Awakening is remembering who you are beneath your habits, beneath fear, beneath craving, beneath old stories. You are awareness. You are capacity for kindness. You are capacity for wisdom. You are capacity for change. So, what should you do after listening to this? Not a list, just a simple invitation. Choose one small daily ritual that expresses your intention to awaken. Make it simple enough that you can do it even on hard days. Do it with sincerity. Watch your mind change over weeks, not hours. Let the practice teach you patience. Patience is a form of compassion toward time. Time is part of karma. You cannot rush a seed into a tree. You can only water it consistently. Now we are nearing the end, and I want to bring it home with a reflection that might create real resonance. Most people are not suffering because they lack information. They are suffering because their attention is fractured and their heart is armored. They know what is good, but they cannot consistently do it because the mind is pulled by impulses. So, they feel guilt, then they numb themselves, then they repeat. Ritual system is a way to restore wholeness. It gathers attention. It softens the heart. It creates a rhythm of remembrance. It makes Seth lived rather than preached. When you live that way, your presence changes. You become less reactive, more stable, more compassionate, and that changes your relationships. It changes your destiny, not by magic, but by the law of cause and effect. Thank you for being here with me today. If this exploration of the Yajurveda and the deeper meaning of ritual touched something inside you, I want you to share your story in the comments. What daily practice has helped you become calmer? What ritual, religious or non-religious, helps you remember your best self? And if you have struggled with discipline, tell us what gets in the way, because someone reading your comment might feel less alone. Before you go, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment to support this space. Your support helps these long-form teachings reach more people who are quietly searching for wisdom, compassion, and awakening. And as always, may your actions be clear, may your heart be gentle, and may your path become lighter with every conscious offering.